Hi there, my name is Abby Martin from the Family Caregivers Center of Mercy, and welcome to our first Take 10. This session today will be focused on change, embracing change you didn't want. So during this time, COVID-19 has changed us. It's changed us personally, and it's changed the way that we are doing business here at the Caregiver Center. We have taken the time to embrace this change, knowing that it is inevitable. We also have been reminding ourselves that we are flexible and that we have experience with change. We have been grieving the losses of what we no longer have, and we have felt sad during this time. However, we've realized what we still have, and we've been trying to focus on that and take steps to get things done we never thought of. And we've been working hard doing that. So out of COVID-19 comes this brand new series at the Caregiver Center we're calling Take 10. It'll be short pieces, 10 to 15 minutes of information that we're offering live via Zoom. They will be taped or recorded and then posted on Mercy Medical Center's YouTube channel to be watched on demand. This is the first of what we hope will be a long series and begins a library of information that we hope is helpful to you as a caregiver. So thank you for joining us today. I would like to introduce Kathy Good, the director at the Family Caregiver Center, who will be our first speaker.
I think it's really exciting that we're starting something new here and that you're just a part of this inaugural group of people that are here to see what we're doing differently. So years ago, I read Scott Peck's The Road Less Traveled. Maybe some of you did too. It became one of my favorite books, and I can remember the day that I was in Minneapolis in this bookstore when it literally kind of jumped off of the shelf at me. And when I opened it, the first line really grabbed me because it said, "Life is difficult." So Scott Peck's thought was that once you quit thinking that life should be easy and realize that it's difficult, it becomes easier because you shift your perspective. So I think that the same thing could be said about change. So if you think change isn't going to happen to you, that life is going to be the way that you want it to be, then any change is going to be more upsetting because you didn't think that it would ever happen. But change is going to happen. So change is going to happen in all kinds of ways, that big and small. It's happening as we speak. So once you start expecting that things will change, then when change happens, you can use your energy to deal with the change and not fighting it with the fact that the change happened. So the first step regarding change is really to embrace it, to accept that change is going to happen. And when you stop and think about it, all of us have been dealing with change and changes all of our lives. So in a sense, we're kind of experts. So when a major change occurs, a change we didn't want, we often struggle and approach dealing with the change from a lack of confidence in our ability to really deal with it. So another step is not just to embrace change, but to remind ourselves that we are experienced change reactors. So I don't want to minimize the feelings of grief and loss that often accompany major change like COVID, especially change that we didn't want like COVID, because a major change can really kind of lay us low. And it can lay us low and we can let it, or we can realize that the sooner that we take some action to deal with the change, the sooner we'll be on our way to finding a new normal, which is what happens when we adapt to our newfound way. Isn't it interesting that we usually talk about the new normal when we're involved in the change that we didn't want? We usually don't talk about the new normal when we graduate or get a new job or move or get married, etc. So the new normal term usually refers to how we live after we adapt to a change that we didn't want, like getting fired, or our spouse dies, or we or someone we love is diagnosed with a chronic condition like dementia or cancer. So what do we do in the face of this change that we don't want? Well, we embrace the change. We remember that we are experienced at reacting to change, and then we need to grieve and mourn the loss of what was. So Pauline Boss is a psychologist who lives in Minneapolis, and she actually coined the phrase ambiguous loss. And this means that when something is here and not here at the same time. She originally coined it and applied it to soldiers who were deployed overseas, because they still kind of were here, but they weren't here physically, but they were not here in the same way that they had been in the past. So they're here and not here. And she also applied it to people living with dementia, where the person is here, but not here as they once were. So I'm stretching the definition to say that I believe that ambiguous loss is when something is here, but not in the same way it was, or to be more clear, when life is here, but not in the same way that we've known it. So she suggests that the way to deal with this kind of a situation is to, one, acknowledge and grieve the loss, but at the same time acknowledge what still is and what we still have. So I had the privilege of meeting with Dr. Boss when Dave, who's my husband, many of you know that, was still living, and he lived with dementia. So Dr. Boss had me list all of the losses I'd suffered as a result of Dave being someone living with dementia. I told her he could no longer help me solve problems, pay bills, make financial decisions. Eventually he couldn't even go to the theater or to the symphony with me or ride bikes. You get the picture. And then she had me list all that I still had at that time. Well, I could still kiss and hug Dave and hold his hand. I could read to him. We could listen to music on the radio together. We could eat together. I could still feed him, etc. You get that picture too. So after he died 5 years ago, I took myself through a similar experience, but this time I had to really focus on what I still had, because my loss of his death was so profound for me. But I still had Emily, our daughter. I had all of the photos and the memories of all of our wonderful times together over 27 years. I still had financial means. I had a very supportive family and friends. I had relief from watching Dave struggle and his changing cognitive and physical abilities. So it's really good to acknowledge what still is and what you still have. So to help me with the change of Dave's dying, I recalled how I'd handled other changes and other losses in my life. So I remembered, some of you may know, I was divorced. I remembered when I got divorced, and one of the things I did was to give myself some time. I didn't expect myself to do everything that I'd always done. I took a break from my volunteer jobs. I talked with a counselor. I surrounded myself with supportive and positive people. So I decided that at the time of Dave's death, I would use some of those same steps to deal with the change, obviously, that his death caused in my life. So it's important to recall from the past how you've handled other changes. Your past experiences with managing changes, your experiences are probably very different than mine, but we all have managed changes in the past. So reflecting on the past and using your experience can help you move into the future. So I love quotes. And one of my favorites is, persistence is what makes the impossible possible, the possible likely, and the likely definite. And so I think we all need persistence in the face of dealing with change. So to manage change, you first have to gain a perspective about it, and then you have to start taking steps. So to review what we've talked about today, you want to embrace change because you know that it's going to happen. Remember that you're a change expert. Mourn your losses. Realize what you still have. Remember the specific ways and steps you took to manage past change. And remember to be persistent and keep taking steps. So that's the end of our first Take 10.
Thank you, Kathy, for presenting today. We appreciate you here at the center. This video will be posted on YouTube on Mercy Medical Center of Cedar Rapids link will be a page. There's also a handout for this session that we plan to post on our website. So thanks again, and hopefully you can join us next week.